The dawn broke over Kurukshetra with a crimson sky, as though the heavens themselves anticipated the blood that would soon stain the sacred earth. The air was heavy, charged with an almost unnatural silence, broken only by the distant sounds of horses snorting, elephants rumbling, and weapons clanging as both armies prepared for battle. On one side stood the Kauravas, their formations vast, glittering, and terrifying in sheer numbers. Chariots lined up like waves ready to crash, elephants armored in iron, their trunks raised like serpents, soldiers gripping spears and swords that glistened in the morning light. The banners of Hastinapur fluttered proudly, bearing the emblems of the mighty warriors of Dhritarashtra. On the other side, the Pandavas readied themselves. Their army was smaller, but the energy surrounding them was different, calm, righteous, almost divine. At the heart of it all sat Arjuna, the son of Pandu, a warrior unmatched in skill, and beside him, holding the reins of his chariot, was none other than Krishna, the supreme being in human form, whose presence turned even the silence into something eternal. And then it began, the sound that would shatter the morning calm and send a tremor across heaven and earth. The conches. The first was Krishna's Panchajanya, its deep resonant roar like thunder rolling across the skies. Arjuna followed, blowing his mighty conch, Devadatta, its piercing cry slicing through the air. Bhima, with his wolf belly strength, raised his great conch Pandra, releasing a blast so powerful it was like the growl of a mountain lion. Nakula and Sahadeva too joined their conches, Shringa and Manipushpaka, blending into a harmony of divine resonance. Then came Yudhishthira, the embodiment of Dharma, his conch Ananta Vijaya echoing like the call of justice itself. One after another, the sound grew, layered, multiplied until the entire Pandava army was a storm of roaring conches. It was no ordinary sound, no mere noise of preparation. It was divine, cosmic, unstoppable. It was as if the universe itself blew through those shells, declaring that the hour of destiny had arrived. The sound did not remain confined to the battlefield. It rose into the skies. It descended into the very soil. It echoed in the rivers. It filled the forests. The heavens trembled. The earth shook. And the hearts of men faltered. On the other side, where Dhritarashtra's sons had assembled with their legions, a strange fear seized them. These were warriors hardened in countless battles, men who had slain enemies without blinking. But in that moment, when the Pandavas' conches roared, they felt something they had never felt before. It was not simply the fear of defeat, it was deeper. It was as if their very souls recognized the truth of their destiny. Their bodies trembled, their hands grew weak, their weapons slipped ever so slightly. Even the elephants seemed restless, stamping their feet nervously as though they too sensed what men could not admit. Duryodhana, the prince of the Kauravas, who had moments earlier boasted of his army's strength, clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, but in his eyes flickered something unspoken doubt. Karna, the mighty warrior, held firm but inwardly felt an unease he could not explain. The great Bhishma, the grandsire, frowned, his heart conflicted, for the sound pierced deeper than the ears, it pierced the conscience. Even the blind king, Dhritarashtra, though seated miles away, asked Sanjaya anxiously, "What is happening, O Sanjaya? What is this sound that shakes my very soul?" Sanjay, blessed with divine vision, could see it all, and he described it to his king, the roaring conches of Krishna and Arjuna, the fear spreading like wildfire through the Kaurava ranks, the trembling hearts that foretold their downfall. It was more than just a sound, it was a prophecy. It was the signal that the Kauravas' fate was sealed. Why did this uproar have such an impact? Why did the hearts of hardened warriors tremble at the mere sound of conches? Because this was no ordinary battlefield. Kurukshetra was Dharmakshetra, the field of righteousness. Here, every act carried cosmic significance, And the conches of the Pandavas were not mere instruments of war, they were vessels of divine energy. Krishna's Panchajanya carried within it the essence of creation itself. Arjuna's Devadatta rang with the promise of protection for the righteous. Bhima's Pondra thundered with unstoppable force. Together, their sound was a declaration of cosmic truth. Adharma would perish, Dharma would triumph. The Kauravas knew this in the depths of their hearts. They had long ignored righteousness, blinded by greed, envy, and arrogance. And now, as the sound tore through heaven and earth, their inner guilt surfaced. They were not merely hearing a battle cry, they were hearing their own doom announced by the universe itself. It was a reminder that no matter how powerful armies may be, no matter how many weapons are raised, unrighteousness cannot escape its destiny. The verse says, "And that tumult, resounding through heaven and earth, rent the hearts of Dhritarashtra's followers." Dhritra say, what does it mean to rend the hearts? It means fear so profound that it splits a person from within, leaving them hollow. The Kauravas were warriors of flesh and bone, but inside they carried insecurity. And the sound of those conches cracked open their armor of pride. Some felt shock, how could the smaller Pandava army produce such power? Some felt awe, was this divine intervention? Some felt dread, did this mean their cause was doomed before the first arrow was even shot? And in that moment, even before the war began, the Kauravas lost something essential, their confidence. A warrior who doubts his own cause is already defeated. The Pandavas, by contrast, grew stronger. For them, the sound was a unifying call, a reminder that righteousness stood with them, that Krishna guided their chariots, that truth itself fought by their side. The Mahabharata is not just a tale of war, it is a mirror of destiny. And in this single moment, in the blowing of the conches, the end was already foretold. For what is sound but vibration, and what is vibration but the echo of truth? The conches declared, the time of the Kauravas had ended. Their arrogance had brought them here, and their downfall was inevitable. Even if their army was vast, even if Bhishma and Drona fought for them, they could not escape the cosmic justice that had been set in motion. Every soldier who trembled at that sound was already defeated in spirit. The arrows, the swords, the bloodshed to come, all of it would only fulfill what had already been decided in that instant. The Pandavas would triumph, for they stood with Dharma, and the Kauravas, despite their strength, would fall, for they stood with Adharma. The battlefield now was alive with the resonance of those conches, their echoes still swirling through the air like divine thunder. The Kauravas tried to shake off their fear, but the truth had already struck their hearts. This moment was not just about the beginning of a war. It was about the revelation of destiny. The verse reminds us that before any weapon is raised, the true battle is fought within the heart. The Pandavas had faith, righteousness, and Krishna. The Kauravas had fear, arrogance, and doubt. And so, as the dust rose, as warriors mounted their chariots, as elephants roared and horses stamped their hooves, the fate of the war was sealed not by arrows but by the sound of truth itself. The tumult that resounded through heaven and earth was not merely the sound of conches, it was the voice of destiny, the roar of Dharma, the call of the universe declaring, the Kauravas will fall, the Pandavas will rise, the end is certain. And thus, the great war of Kurukshetra began not with swords clashing, not with arrows flying, but with the trembling of hearts at the sound of divine conches. The roar of destiny had been heard.